At the beginning of the 19th century, the Avar Nutsalstvo was a large and influential possession, dependent on a number of Avar unions and rural communities with localization in the Caucasus. There was no unified system of administrative division in the Avar Nutsalstvo. The so-called military districts were formed here, which, at the request of the Nutsal, put up soldiers for their own allowance. In accordance with this, local government was also determined. At the head of the property were the hereditary Nutsals, the so-called Nutsal Kai. All issues of internal and external management were resolved by them. From the ruling elite of the Kunzak Nutsal Kai, after the insidious murder in Sharmaki in 1774 of the ruler of the Avar Nutsal, Muhammad Nutsal, power here passed into the hands of his son Umma Khan. After a short period of time, Umma Khan with his victorious troops marched against the rulers of Sharmaki in order to avenge the murder of his father. Before embarking on the path of holy war against his enemies, Umma Khan, together with his squads, first set up his tent for a week in a certain area in the mountains of Avaria. He did this solely in order to gather the people in advance by a certain date, so that they could properly prepare the equipment. When a tent appeared in the named area, the news of this reached all the towers and fortresses of Avaria, and warriors began to flock to Umma Khan from everywhere. This ceremony continued until Umma Khan, together with the columns of his warriors, reached the flat part of the Jar territories. Possessing many commendable qualities, the warriors of Umma Khan behaved quite bravely in battles, and were always ready to accept death for their warlike leader, Nutsal Umma Khan. A short time after the death of his father, Umma Khan became popularly known as Umma Khan the Great. He received this nickname for his courage and the numerous campaigns that he made outside Avaristan against his external enemies. In peacetime, Umma Khan the Great was in his palace in Kunzak, surrounded by the Kunzak fortress, grandiose for its time, built in the style of a medieval castle, designed to defend against external and internal enemies, the bulky and high walls of which, lined around the perimeter of hewn massive stones with jagged open loopholes, inspired the enemy with the idea of its impregnability. It is well known that such structures in the past were intended not only for defensive purposes, but also as a transmission of messages. The traditional ceremony and rituals of seeing off the next campaign of the Avar army were mandatory. During such ceremonies, Umma Khan the Great rode on his white war horse from the square of his palace to the place of gathering of troops, behind the gates of the palace fortress, where armed militiamen from various Avar societies were waiting for him.